Gonna wait to see if it's streaming or not. Like always. I don't know how I'm gonna organize myself yet, but I'm thinking about doing a spreadsheet where I have the videos, video ideas, and then or the videos that I'm gonna do next, the title, or maybe some description. I think that's what I'm gonna do now. And I already know, like I talked about before, I already know what videos I'm gonna make first. You wanna make them right away. I signed up or I sent a request to be affiliate for all the products that I marked on the list there. I think so far, the ones that I received the response, they didn't accept. And I think I'm gonna have to start it out with the ones that have affiliate programs. I've signed up for all of them, and I think it's easier as well because I don't have enough followers. I think for the other ones should be to accept me, I think. And then I might also look. I've signed up for all of these sites here. They have a bunch of affiliate programs, so I might look into them later. But the thing is, I wanna make the videos first. I wanna get at least a couple of videos and get used to making the videos, creating the thumbnails and things like that. So, and then I go back. Maybe I'll go back to doing that when once I build the funnel, start putting the emails. So video name, description. Then the thing is, I don't know if I can put comments on open office. Because what I'm planning to do is I'm gonna have an outline for each video, and it would be good if I can link the outline, but I don't think I can do that because I think it's gonna be the outline format's gonna be better if I do it with the OpenOffice writer instead of the spreadsheet here. But I guess I'll do just one by one, or maybe five at most. And then I'll keep recycling the files. I'll use the same outline structure and then just change it from video to video. So my plan is first to do all the videos, to make the videos, and then start thinking about thumbnail and thumbnail title, yeah, and SEO, other SEO stuff. And I think I'm gonna get the video queue plan once I have the videos. Once I have at least 5 videos, I think I'm gonna get the video queue plan, and then I'm gonna see what are all the tools that I can use that are gonna help me to rank higher or to have the best strategy to get views. Because I think views are not that important. I think it's more important neither views or subscribers. I think the engagement is the most important thing. So that's what I'm trying to maximize for. And the first one is going to be Python versus JavaScript. Oh, this is not going to be the name. I'm just gonna put video here. Uh, Maybe I put part 1 and then I put on the description. Because that's the thing. I wanted to do an outline to write what I'm gonna talk about in each video. Because the hardest part for me so far, thinking about this, I'm thinking about in my head what I'm gonna say, what I'm gonna talk about. But the difficult thing is because there's so much stuff to teach, and I don't know, it's hard to think about a structure of which videos to do first, and then what I'm gonna talk about on each one. And I'm also thinking about doing something where if the video gets too long, I just cut in the middle and upload as two separate videos. Because in order for me to make these videos, I think I'm gonna study a lot on each one. There are already things that I'm gonna study today, right now, for the first video. And the other ones I think is gonna be the same thing because although I know the concepts now, to explain them is different because I have to know the terminology, and that's the annoying part. That's why I want to get rid of this stuff first, because it's not really that useful to know these things. Maybe it is. Maybe it's gonna help me to study them more. But I don't think it's from a teaching standpoint. If someone is learning, it doesn't really matter. It's kind of like teaching grammar to people when teaching a language. It's kind of useless, and I think the educational system has it backwards, where they teach you all this bullshit that doesn't matter, instead of teaching the practical stuff first. And then once the person is at the point where they can communicate with other people, then it makes sense if they want to learn the grammar and learn how to phrase things or structure the text better. So first comes the 80% of the fundamental, that is the practical stuff of what people are actually going to be doing. And that's my biggest concern. I want to focus on that first so that people can learn as fast as possible the actual stuff that they're going to be doing most of the time. And then after that, I can put the more nuanced stuff that is going to help them become better, which is going to be difficult for me as well because that kind of stuff takes a lot of practice and is also a lot harder to explain. So my concern is that once I make a couple of videos, then I realize that I forgot something on the previous videos, and then I have to redo everything again. So that's the kind of thing that I'm thinking about. Like, how do I think about all the sequence of videos first, and then I try to structure everything like that? Or do I make the videos and as I go, I try to make it up for the mistakes that I'm gonna make on the previous ones? And obviously I'm gonna make mistakes. The other thing that I'm thinking about is, I don't think right now I'm gonna do this, but in the future I'm probably gonna do iterations of the same videos to make them better and better. And as I gain more experience, unless I feel like it's not that important and I was able to capture at least a decent amount, it was good enough that it doesn't require me to do it again. But some of the videos I'm thinking about doing version 2 or version 3 and so on and so forth to try to get better and better at explaining the same thing in a more efficient and fast way. But then the downside of that is that it might be confusing for people that don't know, because then they're just gonna get into the channel and they're gonna see version 2, version 3 of the same video, then they might be confused if it's the same thing or not. So this one I think is important. Hopefully I can manage to make it as short as possible. But the idea is I'm gonna show my YouTube channel and I'm gonna talk about the place that I'm coming from, which is self-taught myself. And say as a disclaimer that I don't know everything that I'm talking about 100% and it's better for you to do your own research, things like that, so that people can understand where I'm coming from so they don't get misguided. Because I want to make it clear that as much as I can, that I haven't had a job or worked in a professional setting yet. So I'm definitely not the best person to talk about structuring things on a team kind of way. Because that's something I also seen people talk about on other YouTube creators where they do all these tutorials and they don't take into consideration that when you're in a team setting, you're gonna have to do things differently because there's structure that you need to put in the code so that everyone understands what's going on. And obviously that's gonna be very hard for me, if not impossible, because I don't know what it's like to work with other people. The only thing that I understand is the lint. People use ESLint and other tools like that, which are frameworks that allow you to force the same structure of syntax along the project. And I think people use that to make the code consistent in the way that people write it. Then on the second video, yeah, talk about syntax. So maybe I'll do the outline for this now, and then I'll think about the third one. I was gonna say put something else here in the end. was gonna say here. And maybe I'll just put it like this. I was thinking about it that I was gonna do this, then show what people do and then what I'm gonna do, and then I was gonna talk about something else in the end. I guess I'll leave to the other video. I think I'll make 3 videos at a time. 3 of these things at a time, and then I'll record the videos and then I'll start the process over again. Because otherwise it's gonna be too much to think about. And I definitely, at least I don't know how hard it's gonna be to make each video. I imagine it's gonna be really hard, especially if I edit stuff, which I'm planning to do, but I don't think I'm gonna do a lot of editing because I don't wanna spend a lot of energy on that. Hopefully I can get enough money where I can hire someone to edit as fast as possible, so I don't have to think about that. Yeah, but my plan is to make as many videos as I possibly can in advance, so that I can do other stuff and already have all the videos ready, and then I'll go back to creating, finishing the blog and things like that, while I still have time ahead from all the videos. So this one. Yeah, now there is something that I'm thinking about, which is if it's worth it to put, because I was thinking about getting all the syntax that exists on Python and JavaScript. Maybe not all of the syntax, because I think there's going to be a lot, but the fundamental ones. And then showing that. So maybe I'll do this on this video. Show all the key syntax for both. And this is the part that I'm gonna have to research and study, which I'm gonna do now. Python and JavaScript. Show importance. Search terms and key words. Talk about and just search for this. Yeah, so one of the problems, and I want to address this here. One of the problems I had when I was starting out is that when you start something out, you don't know what you don't know. So it becomes very hard to search for things because you don't know what to search for. So things like how the backend and front end are integrated, how does it work, this connection. I want to make sure I share keywords about this here so people know what to look for. And the other main thing is software design, which, because in the way that I learned first, I went through free code camp and then I did the code for each thing. And then I was thinking about the code inside of the file. But then the question that I kept having was, how is everything connected? Like how does that work? And I didn't understand in the beginning that this was a software design. It didn't occur to me that there were obviously I thought that people were thought about this, but I just didn't know how to search for this. So I want to make sure that I talk about this inside of this video because and that's the thing, usually the content about these things are gonna be in the title because people want to get views, which makes sense. So they are gonna make videos saying Python software design or stuff like that, or model view controller, for example, which is one of the designs. But if you don't know what software design is and what software designs exist, then you don't know to search for model view controller or other types of design. So it's kind of like this paradoxical thing where if people make videos and they put these things in the title, but then the people that need to learn these things don't know about them, so they can search for them in the title. So I want to try to solve that. So make videos that have keywords that don't have this, but might be something that someone that wants to learn about these things would search for. And then I'll talk about these things on the video so that they know those keywords and then they can search for these keywords later to find content about this stuff. But the only concern that I have about doing this on this video is that it might be too much work for the first video, but I think it probably is worth it because it goes back to the thing that I was talking about where I'm probably gonna learn stuff as I go, so I might learn some keywords and terms along the way, and then I already made the video, so I would have to make the video again to put the keywords. Yeah, but I think as long as I focus on the 80% that gives the most results, then it's probably fine. What are the 80%? The 20% brings 80% of results. Talk about that. Maybe I'll do this on this video only because I think there is going to be a lot of stuff to talk about for the terms, and then I'll do video number 3 where I do what I was thinking about doing, which is to deconstruct or explain how everything works at a fundamental level. Everything works at a fundamental level. Why syntax determines what happens. And this is gonna be very difficult. I think I'm probably gonna have to make this video multiple different times because it's gonna be very challenging to explain this in a way that is efficient and fast, and yeah, because it's hard to connect everything and explain in a way that is easy to understand. But I wanna explain things from the transistor. So talk about transistors. Yeah, but I'm not sure if I'm gonna start off. So explain how a computer talk about transistors and how they create logic gates. Talk about, maybe I should do bullet points as well, this thing. Or maybe this one is better. And this is the part that is difficult to, I think I want to remove this thing. Because I want to talk. So the idea is to say first how to talk about or explain that the code is only writing a bunch of things in the file, and that the computer interprets that, and then talk about how does it know why some keywords have, explain that some keywords have special meaning and some don't. And some keywords and some don't. Show fake example. Illustrate. Yeah, then I'll write down I'll write down an arbitrary keyword, and then I talk about how that word means something, but other word might not necessarily mean anything. And then I'm gonna go into transistor and logic gates, and then explain the binary impulses. Maybe I should do the binary first because it makes more sense. So talk about the binary. Yeah, and this part is gonna be really hard, I think. Is that I want to talk about how everything is a binary in the computer, is a binary sequence of impulses, and that the way that it is determined is through transistors, or transistors are the things that allow you to create logic gates which have the ability to put zeros and ones at a specific conditions, logic conditions. And then I want to explain that from those logic gates, from the transistors and the binary impulses, you create logic gates, and then from logic gates, you start having start being able to build some logic that allows you to do calculations. And then from those calculations, that's pretty much what all the computing is. And then there are other special types of transistors, other special types of circuits that allow you to retain memory, to retain a state, set and reset. Then I'm going to talk about SR latch. And then from this logic and these calculations, you're able to map mapping between numbers and letters. You're able to map letters. So all that a letter is in the computer doesn't necessarily understand the letters. It's just a collection of impulses, and then we make an agreement that we're gonna arrange these impulses in a certain way. So impulses are zeros and ones, and then we're going to arrange them in a certain way that we are able to convert them. Well, first we convert them into decimals, and then we arrange the numbers in a certain way that they give us a representation of a number through something that we agree with. So talk about rule sets and how they are named compilers. Then I want to say that this sequence of rules that we make agreements with are the things that people call compilers. So pretty much sequences of rules that allows us to simplify the abstraction of the collection of zeros and ones into something that is easier to understand for human beings. And then I'm going to talk about how across time that's what's happening, where because the computer is an extension of ourselves, all that we are doing is we are compressing the logic into concepts. And that's the evolution of programming, where it starts on the hardware, where it's only the geometrical properties of the hardware designed in a certain way, create logic gates, and then from logic gates we have the computation, which is the arithmetic logic unit. And then from that, because we don't wanna, we are not very good at dealing with a bunch of different numbers and all this complexity. What we do as human beings, we abstract all the logic into a concept. And then we do that by creating rule sets. And these rule sets are compilers. And all that our programming language is this massive, complex logic simplified into a bunch of concepts. But then in the process of doing that, you have the distinction between fundamental properties and things that change across time, because the fundamental properties are all the logic that was abstracted into concepts over time. And the nuances are the logic that wasn't abstracted yet, or that has more degrees of freedom. And that's the reason why some keywords have meaning and some don't. And that's only based on our agreements as what is going to have meaning and what is not going to have meaning. So every time you type a simple symbol in a file, whether or not that symbol has meaning is pretty much the decision of previous programmers or people that built the languages to put meaning behind them by constructing a hierarchy of logic on top of that concept. And they do that by these rule sets that they create that they name compilers and interpreters. And then I can talk about my goal of explaining the different of teaching in a certain way, if I can, as possible, as much as I can, to illustrate and highlight what is actually fundamental and what is the difference in syntaxes. So because every single language is gonna have different syntaxes that represent the same fundamental concepts. And then this is the thing, I'm not sure if I'm gonna search for this, because I remember searching for this in the past and extremely hard to find. And the only way for me to know that would be, which I think I'm gonna do in the future, which is study compilers, because I want to understand. I wasn't able to find the explanation yet of this, which is why a lot of the languages have different names for the same thing. So for example, in JavaScript it's a function, and in Python it's def, the keyword. But the fundamental principle is the same. So the difference is probably on the way that the compiler interprets them. But even if that's the case, I don't see any particular reason for giving a different keyword, because even if the functionality and the way that the rule sets create the logic in the lower level, even if there are differences there, I don't see the reason why creating a different syntax, because it would be much easier if all the programming languages used the exact same syntax, because the principles don't change that much. So it would be a lot easier to learn. But then I think that the reason why this happens is the same reason why we have different languages and different accents across space-time, because it's something more fundamental, which is the nature of the collective consciousness in relationship to space-time, which the collective consciousness is feeding the data from the environment, and it fits that into logic and abstraction, which is the geometrical structure of the electromagnetic field of the body. And communications is the exchange of sound waves that happen through this configuration of the impulses of the electromagnetic field of the body across time, which creates the nature of the collective consciousness, which shapes the information, because the information is the exchange of the sound waves through the computational gates, which are the electromagnetic properties of everyone, which are related to the geometrical structure of the body and the synapses. So over time, across space-time, there is a distinction between languages, and that shows up on the syntax, because the properties of the environment are different, so the stimulation is different. So the logic that is created is different, but there's still fundamental properties across all languages, which are the essence of the geometrical structure, or the archetypes of the human collective, which are the things that remain constant over time. Not constant, but remain close to constant, because everything is a fractal. So the fundamental patterns of the universe are this multifractal structure, and the nuances are infinite in complexity. And the nature of space-time is the asymptote of the fundamental things that never change, or that rarely change, and the things that are more volatile. So it's a spectrum of density that makes up space-time. And that's the same thing that happens on programming, because as things evolve, because they evolve in different spaces, you have different syntax to represent the same fundamental concepts. So the fundamental concepts are the archetypes behind the differences. But it's extremely difficult to talk about this stuff, because you see how everything goes on and on, and the problem is, that's going to be the most difficult part for me, I think, because as I start talking about this, I'm going to deviate from all over the place, and then it's going to be hard for people to understand what I'm talking about. So I need to figure out a way to bring more structure so that I make sure I explain, but at the same time I don't deviate too much. And I think that's going to be really hard to do. Drinking tea as well. One thing that I'm going to have to look it up now is the conversion between binary and decimal, because I always forget that. And the other thing that I'm going to see is the videos from Ben. I'll also recommend Ben's YouTube channel, which are the videos from hardware, the best videos I found about hardware. It's definitely worth watching. Definitely gonna recommend for people. Yeah, so I'm gonna have to search for the conversion between binary and decimal, and then I'm also gonna have to search, because I don't remember really well, in the sequence, in the playlist, in the Ben's playlist, there are videos that he explains the hexadecimal structure. And as far as I understand right now, but that's the thing that I'm not sure, is that I think that all the hexadecimal are is, like I said before, the collection of impulses that are structured in a certain way that gives you the design of the letters, but then it doesn't necessarily mean anything besides that. So you're just making it seem like is the letter by rearranging which lights are going to be on or off, but in reality, for the computer, it doesn't mean anything necessarily. It's just that we decide that the symbol of A the symbol of A is the symbol of A, so we're gonna activate these bits at the places that represent A. And so the A itself is just a representation that we put on it. And because we're able to, is a rule set that we create, then it doesn't matter that the computer doesn't intrinsically know what A is. It's just a collection of impulses, because it's gonna be the same across time, across everywhere, because it's a concept that we understand and we agree on. So in reality, the computer is just a bunch of random impulses, but because not random, they have the structure. And because of the structure, that there is agreement. And that's the thing that brings me to the blockchain, which is why I think that AGI has to be born out of blockchain or something similar, because there's a structure of consensus that creates this meaning between things, and that's the fundamental property that I'm talking about, I think, which is the consensus between different agents over the impulses that are received through the network. They are the fundamental property of these structures. And then what changes and what's more volatile are the nuances around this structure. And then obviously that brings more and more questions about paradigm shifts and the nature of computation and things like that. Because you can make an argument that there is no fundamental reason why we agree that the symbol of the letter A is going to be A, and different symbols are going to mean something different. Or you can make the argument that those things are fundamental and we're capturing a fundamental thing. And I think that probably the solution, like with anything else, based on the principle that I follow, is that it's going to be a paradoxical point between the relative polarities that converges towards infinity. Because there are always going to be relative polarities in everything that you do. And they make up the multifractal geometry of your identity, which is what you perceive as space-time. So mathematics is just that thing as well. So mathematics is the entanglement between observer and what's being observed, because it's a mapping of the geometry of the environment from an observer that is abstracted away with symbols. So it's a reduction of the abstraction space, or maybe the other way around, where you have the environment and then you have a lower density of the environment, which is the abstraction. So the human being is the funnel, interdimensional funnel between what is more dense, which is considered physical or space-time, and what is lower density, which is the abstraction. And then it's in the space of the abstraction, which is the four-dimensional property of the human psyche, you have these patterns, which are the symbols we use to identify the geometry of the environment. And this becomes mathematics. And it is fractal by nature because of that. So mathematics itself might not be, or it is and it isn't fundamental to the universe, because it is fundamental to human beings. But it might not be the overall arching or fundamental truth of all the realities and all possible universes, because that's the problem of the epistemology of science and the hard problem of consciousness, because there is this entanglement between observer and what's being observed. So you can only know the truth through what you experience. And that's mathematics to a certain extent, I think, because it is true, but it's always true in relationship to the thing that is experiencing itself. So you can say that mathematics is the fractal representation of the geometry that we use to create systems and communicate. And it's fractal because, but then that's the question that shows up, which is the thing that I was talking about before, which is why specifically the symbol 1 or 0 or things like that. What are the things that are fundamental that create these specific symbols and not other symbols? So why isn't for 1? Why do we write for the way that it is written? Is there any reason for that, or is it arbitrary? And I think the symbol itself is arbitrary, but the fundamental principle is probably a multifractal geometry that is essential and fundamental. And there's always this relationship between the two because that's the distribution of density of an observation, of an awareness. And that's the reason why the symbols always go from 0 to 10. So from 0 to 1 is the same symbols than from 0 to 100. And what changes is the scale of observation. So the multifractal essence is this collection of unique symbols. And then brings the question of, it might be possible to create different mathematics if you have different collection of symbols that represent different multifractal objects. Which is the reason why I think that in the imaginary numbers are just the makeup of the abstraction space from human beings, and they are a higher dimensional plane from which space-time exists. So there is this funnel between the complex plane and the space-time, and complex plane is the space of imagination, and the funnel of consciousness and awareness, observation, is this funnel between this higher dimensional plane, which is the complex plane, the plane of abstractions, into the physical, which is space-time, which is a self-fulfilling prophecy by nature. And gravity is the density of observation of the awareness that exists in this field of consciousness. I have no idea what I'm talking about this now. Then we'll go back to this. Yeah, so the question is, how do I draw? There's two challenges, which is one, how do I draw the line of how far I'm gonna go with this? How much I'm gonna explain or try to explain, so that is not too confusing but not too simple as well. And the other thing is, how do I keep track of the structure while talking about this, so I can go from one point to the other. I think I'm gonna try my best to not force myself to talk fast or to try to rush things, because I think that's gonna mess me up when trying to explain. So I think I'm gonna take pauses and be very slow, and then I'll just edit it out later. It's probably better. This is gonna be more natural than if I try to rush things so that the video is not long. But I definitely, one of my biggest concerns is not making, because there's a lot of videos like that where you feel like the person make the video longer than it needs to be just because they want to increase the watch time. And I think that's a paradox, because it's like doing drugs. On the short term, it feels like you're winning because you're making more money because you have more watch time. But on the long term, you're losing because you're losing credibility and trust, because you're not concerned with giving as much value as possible to the people that are watching. So that in the long term, you lose, I think. So, and if instead of focusing on that, if you made smaller videos where your only concern is adding as much value as possible, then people would be a lot more loyal and come back more. So in the short term, it looks like you're losing because you have less watch time, less money. but then on the long term, you grow an audience a lot faster and retain a lot more because people understand that your main concern is to give them value, so they're more likely to come back or buy stuff from you. But I could be wrong, obviously, as we'll see. You briefly talk about the difference between syntax and fundamentals. Explain that some keywords have special meaning and some don't. Show fake but is right. Yeah, and as I do these videos, these lives here, I'm gonna write this stuff down that I need or that I think I will need to make the video. And then only then I'll go and record the videos. Talk about how people build it up from binary impulses to complex logic. Briefly talk about SR latch. This is another thing that I think I'm gonna separate an entire video for, which is one of the main key things that I didn't understand when I was starting out. It's like, how the hell is possible that the computer knows the state that it was at before? Once you push the power off button and then you turn on again, how is it possible that it knows the state from before? Where is the stuff stored in the hardware? I didn't understand that. And I still don't understand to a certain extent. That's why I think it's going to be better to separate to another video, because I want to do a lot more research on that. So far, the way that I think about it is through SR latches, which are a circuit of magnetic impulses and electromagnetic impulses through transistors that allow you to retain a state. So you can set or reset binaries, and then through a sequence of that, you have the memory. And I also know that there are different hard drives, and the way that they store the information is different. And there's this funnel of trade-offs where the more you can store, the slower it is, and the less you can store, the faster it is, because it's more dynamic. And it relates to the stuff that I was talking about with the density of information, of awareness. I think it's the same concept. The more dense you want it to be, the slower is going to be by definition, because you're decreasing the degrees of freedom. And the growth of the complexity of the thing that you're structuring is always going to grow exponentially in relationship to the field. I don't think it grows, it just changes, but the perception of it is growth or reduction of entropy, because it's a hologram. Yeah, the other concern that I have is that if I talk about this stuff about the geometry and the transistors, if it's gonna be true out there for people and they're gonna lose interest because they can't see the connection. So one of the fundamental principles that I think is very important, and I learned from Seven Habits of Highly Effective People from Stephen Covey, one of the best books I've read, is that begin with the end in mind. And I think that's very important as well. So I want to make sure that when people are learning this, they understand how useful it's going to be and how practical it's going to be, even though it doesn't seem like it in the beginning. So I want to connect them to the two. So I have to think about how I'm going to do that, how I'm going to put that in the video so they know that this is going to become something. Because that's the other thing. When I was doing the free code camp exercises, at first I had no idea that everything was strings, arrays, and objects and things like that. And the whole time that I was doing that, or in the beginning, I was thinking about, okay, but when are we gonna get to the actual part where I get to build the software? Because I didn't understand, like, how is it possible that you have this stuff in the string, in the computer, the screen, and it's just a bunch of numbers and matrices. Then after that, after I had some experience there, I realized, and it's very obvious, but you don't make this connection between the color of the pixels and the number of the way that the matrix is structured, and the numbers in the computer and how everything is connected. That's the hardest part, I think. So, and that's the biggest challenge that I'm having now, which is how to explain things in a way that it gives the person the vision of how everything is connected, but it's not so complex in the beginning that everyone gets lost. So it has to be beginning with the end in mind. So yeah, maybe I should talk about this stuff. So maybe yeah, I think I'm gonna talk about this first. Because that way the person knows that what I'm talking about is directly related to how to code. Talk about mapping between numbers and letters. Talk about rule sets and how they are named compilers. Talk about transistor and how they create logic gates. Then I think that's enough for this video, probably. It's probably gonna be long as well. I'm probably gonna have to cut into different videos and do a bunch of different takes. This is gonna be extremely hard to explain all this stuff. And then in the next video, I'm gonna talk about the start talking about all the syntaxes and the symbols that I named in the first video. And I'm gonna try to make a syntax tree. So I'm gonna take all the symbols. First, take all the symbols that are equivalent in both languages, or that have different names, but they're working the same way, like lists, tuples, and objects. Then briefly talk about the differences, like classes. Then through each concept, like decorators, I know that JavaScript has decorators as well. It's just a different name. And then the complex things I'm gonna leave for later, and the nuances as well, like scope, the differences in declaration of variables, of var and lat, hoisting in JavaScript, and the difference yeah, the arrow function and the difference in context in that. The this keyword or self in Python. It's gonna be extremely hard to explain as well. So let me go back to the first. I think that's it for this one. I'm very nervous to do these videos as well, not gonna lie. Because I'm already used to doing these sorts of streams where I just show up and show what I learn, where I'm learning. But there's always this fear or anxiety when trying something new. So, which I also had in the beginning of this channel as well. That's why I want to do the videos as fast as possible so I get over that initially. Show YouTube channel and talk about where I'm coming from. Show how people usually teach. What I'm going to do is that. Yeah, so let me see if I have a project open on VS Code. Because I guess I'm gonna create another project inside of this folder. I think I'm not gonna. I'm just gonna delete the file after. Maybe that's a mistake. Because maybe I wanna keep the code later, so next time I do the videos, I can go back to the stuff that I used before. Yeah, maybe that's actually a good idea. But the only concern that I have is that I don't want a bunch of garbage here, because once I have a bunch of videos, then it's gonna be hard to know what everything is. And if I do by name, video 1, video 2, etc., then it's also gonna be hard to identify. And maybe I'll do that. And obviously, I'm not going to think about the name now. I'm just putting this name like this because it's easier for me to understand. But once I'm going to upload the videos, I'm going to think about titles that make more sense. And like I talked before, one of my concerns is being able to find titles that beginners will search for, but at the same time have stuff that allows them to know the stuff that they don't know. That I talk about things that allow them to search for things so that they can learn themselves by watching other videos. Oh, one of the things that I probably should talk about as well, but then that's the thing, I don't know if it's gonna be too much off topic, but I wanted to talk about how maybe I should explain that as well in the first videos. Because one of the things that I didn't understand in the beginning is how the IDE connects with the operational system and how the operational system talks with the internet, and how the routers connect to the computer and the operational system. So how the bridge between these things work. And that's a very big topic on itself. So maybe I'll talk about the keywords, but then I don't explain anything, and I'll leave that for later videos. I think that's probably the best to do. Because and maybe this is still hard for me to understand, is because when you're beginning to learn how to code, and you're thinking pretty much from the point of view of softwares that you used in the past and how they work, and you don't necessarily understand which programming languages are used for each type of software. And it's still something I have trouble with today, which is very hard to think about, which is the different GUIs, graphical user interface, you can use, and different programming languages you can use to create software, and the differences in the why certain people choose certain languages to create certain softwares, and what is the language designed for. So for Python, I didn't understand in the beginning that what people use Python the most is automation and machine learning and AI, and is not really something you build that has an executable and something that you're gonna build a graphical user interface most of the time. You can do that in Python, obviously, but that's not usually what people use for. So the idea I had in my mind in the beginning was that I was going to build code and then I was going to be able to see the interface, but that's not how it works in Python. And also, because of that, it's not clear and this is also something, but that part I think I'm not gonna be able to teach people on, because like the thing that I was talking about, having a lack of experience of working with other people, which is when people, if you're doing a freelancing job, for example, what are the expectations of people? Like, do they expect to receive an executable, or do they expect to receive the Python file and then they're gonna run in their own IDE? Like, how does that work? And this is also something that is hard to find videos talking about. I don't think I'm gonna use. Yeah, I'm not gonna talk about the interpreter. Or maybe I should. Yeah, but on this first video, I don't think I'm gonna do anything. I think I'm just gonna have this file, this blank file, and then I'm gonna explain that people usually type, and then I explain what they do. And then I'm gonna say that I'm not gonna do this. I'm gonna talk about concepts instead. Maybe I should have the. Yeah, maybe I'll leave it like this. In the video, sure. I wanna start researching everything that I'm gonna talk about. Maybe I should go, because the thing, I'm thinking about closing the stream here, then go film the first video, and then go back. But the thing is, I don't want to chop it up too much, so to create a bunch of different streams for this channel. And there's also gonna be not a big problem, but it's hard to think about titles to put on this channel now, because they're gonna be related to the other one. And yeah, it's gonna be, because if I do part 1, part 2, part 3, then the problem is, if I'm making the same video, but then there's 2 parts, then I have to do part 1, part 2, 2 times. So this is the part 1 of part 1, and then part 2 of part 1, and then gets too complicated. Or I have to create a unique title each time, because the issue is, if I create videos with the same title, then it's gonna get confusing to understand later on which one is which. So there needs to be some differentiation. But for this channel, I don't really give a shit about any of these things. I don't think I didn't do this channel with the intention to grow or do anything like that. I think the main priority is when I started doing this was to start as fast as possible. So not wait forever to start making videos, because I already had the idea that I was gonna make videos, or which is something that I also don't really care about that much. But I think in the day and age we live in, if you don't have money to start, or if you have a very small amount of money, the best way to start is to create an audience and then create a funnel, which I already understood that way back in the day. And that's the only reason why I want to make videos. But then it was taking me a long time to start that for several different reasons, but also because I'm not sure, and that's still something that I'm kind of struggling with, which is whether or not fame is worth it, because I think that the costs of fame are too high in relationship to the benefits. So there's this trade-off. So I'm pretty sure I want to make a lot of money, but I'm not sure if I want to be famous. But in the day and age we live, fame is the fastest and most efficient way, I think, of making a lot of money. So creating a YouTube channel. So the reason why I made this channel first was to get used to making videos and exposing myself. And I didn't really care about growing or titles or things like that, or the thumbnail. So, and the other thing that was stopping me from doing these shorter videos, which is something that I know that I'm gonna struggle with a lot as well, is that there is a reason why people that are very good at what they do usually are not very big on social media. So the best programmers are probably have a very small following. And the reason why is because everything is a trade-off of energy. So the more energy you spend on making videos and editing and all of that, the less energy you're gonna have to do what's essential. So that's usually why lies are more allowed and show up more, but they last a lot longer. They last a lot less because, yeah, because it's volatile. And that's one of the issues of making videos like that, because then you have to spend a lot of energy thinking about the title, the SEO, and the editing, and all this stuff. And then it gets complicated because of the attention as well. Then people start making videos about you, and then you have to deal with all of this stuff, which is fine, but then it takes a lot of mental capital from doing the things that are actually important, which is focusing on fundamentals and systems. And that's one of the reasons why I think it's pretty stupid, and most people do that, of arguing about politics, and people specifically, people like Elon or Mark Zuckerberg or anyone like that, because people are gonna die and everyone is different. So if everyone is unique, you can't create a system to predict their uniqueness, if that makes sense. So it goes against the scientific paradigm because you can predict. So you can't use science to predict outliers, because otherwise they wouldn't be outliers. So that's this statistical problem with the way that we create systems. So in that sense, it doesn't make sense to create systems to think about people instead of the systems, because even if you get 100% correct, your judgment of their character or the downsides of or positive sides of who they are, it doesn't matter, because you can't predict if they die, there's not gonna be anyone that is equal to them. So all the work that you did is relevant because they're gonna die anyway. So, and that's the reason why it's a lot smarter to think about the systems, because the systems are the parts of the people that have some degree of consistency across time, and then you can create frameworks around that. So the archetypal structures make sense to discuss about. So the qualities of people that remain somewhat consistent across time, so you can create systems that take them into account. So instead of thinking about Elon Musk as a person or Mark Zuckerberg as a person, it makes a lot more sense to think about them as probabilistic distributions. So things, for example, like IQ. There's always going to be some percentage of the population that has very high IQ and some percentage that is going to have very low IQ. And then across all the other characteristics, it's going to be the same thing. And then the person itself is the collection of this multifractal of probabilities that make up the geometry of what they are, which is the multifractal structure of their psyche and their patterns of behaviors. So it's completely useless to argue about left and right. It's a lot more useful to think about the relative symmetries and the density of the probability distribution that make up the geometrical object that creates the patterns of behaviors and the power that they create and the way they shape the environment across time, instead of discussing the specific people. Yeah, so I might decide as well after I make a bunch of these videos if I see that there is not a lot of return and I'm putting too much energy. I'm gonna try to find that balance so that I don't get too carried away from what I think is most important, which is focusing on the fundamentals instead of. But in this case of making videos, I think it might be worth it because of the thing about the money that I was talking about. Because if you increase your efficiency or your reach, then you can make money passively, and then that creates a virtuous effect because then you have more time in the future. So there's this balance between the amount of problems it causes and the returns you get, and it's very difficult to calculate. And what's extremely difficult, and I think is a problem that everyone is having right now, which is we are not prepared, the hardware of human beings are not prepared to deal with the consequences of having higher density of information about your character. So what computers do is they increase the density of what it means to be you, because everything is on the internet. So when you're interacting with people through the internet, you have to keep in mind the past and the future and how they're gonna affect the way that you behave and also the different relationships you have, which is fundamentally different than in the way that you interact on space-time. Because on space-time, you can have interactions with people in one way and then with other people in another way, which creates the splitting personality types that you have with them because of the differences in behavior and protocols of communication you have with them. But then the internet takes that away because it exposes you to everyone at the same time. And it becomes really difficult to think about how to create an identity that is fully integrated with everyone at the same time. That is still authentic, but it takes into consideration the structure of morality, of the collective consciousness of every moment in time, which is the thing that is used to keep stability in society. Because if everyone is fully authentic, there's too much tension and too much chaos. Because the direction of the vectors that make up what each one's identity is different, which increases the tension in society. And that's the reason why I have the matrix, or the force of morality, the collective, to bring stability. So pretty much everything you say can get you canceled 20 years from now when the morality changes, and it can be reframed. And even if that's not the case, because people now are more aware of that, it becomes a problem because then collectively it's harder for us to reach or to get sense making and consensus. Because if everyone starts doing deepfakes and we have no common share of meaning, no consensus protocol that we can agree on certain things, then we lose the sense of reality, which is the stuff that I was talking about computers before, which is the reason why it doesn't matter which symbol we're gonna put to represent the letter A, for example, but as long as everyone agrees that that symbol is gonna be used to represent A, then you can have communication and you can have a system. But if not everyone can agree of what is the symbol or what it doesn't mean, then you don't have, it stops being functional. And that's the problem with deepfakes. And that's the reason why I think even if deepfakes exist, there's gonna be a need for figuring that stuff out. But the whole point is that it makes things a lot more complex to think about. Yeah, this I'm gonna have to research now. So how I'm gonna search for this? I guess I can write the other stuff. I think this is something that is difficult to search for as well, and that I was always curious about how other people do it, but I don't have a clear way of thinking about this, which is in which way I'm gonna present this, because I can write on the IDE, but I think it's best if I use something, maybe a picture, or I can write it down somewhere, just so show all the symbols. And I was thinking about using SkyLidraw for this, but I'm not sure if it's gonna be. Maybe I'll do that because it's the easiest one. But I would like to search for a way to create animations or things like that. I'm not sure if I'm gonna be able to do that if I edit myself. I think when I hire someone to edit, they probably know this stuff. But yeah, maybe I should spend some time thinking about how to research that. So what tools should... But then that's the problem. I don't think I'm gonna do that because then it goes into what I was just talking about, where it's gonna be too expensive energy-wise for me. Or I'm gonna spend too much time editing instead of focusing on what I'm trying to be good at, which is programming. So it doesn't make a lot of sense. And maybe I'll put everything on the same box. I wonder if I can make it this bigger. Yeah, I think I'm gonna do like this, Python here, and then JavaScript, and then I'm gonna put another one for general concepts. Oh, actually, it's better if I copy the other one, so they are the same format. Doesn't need to be perfect, obviously. Let me move this here. Yeah, now I have to search for all the symbols. I don't think I'm gonna search for all of them. I'm just gonna search for the most important now, and then later in the future, if I realize that I missed something or no, I think I'm gonna do another video and then yeah, I can make another video, talk about that, and then link the video in this video later. That might be a good solution. And then maybe I make comments and then pin the comments explaining the stuff that I added. Search term and keywords. Yeah, so maybe I think I'll do here in the bottom. I'll increase the size of these things and this one is not necessary. So I'm gonna get all the symbols or most of the symbols that I can think of for each one. Then from these symbols, I'm gonna put on the bottom here what I think are the 20% that give the most results. Okay, so I'll be right back. The fuck? Maybe. I wonder if it's gonna be confusing if I put it like this. And this one is better. I should do it like this. I think I'll do it like this. And these ones, maybe I'll just leave this one and then I'll explain later. I guess that this is gonna be just the symbols, not the explanation. So, but I'll leave. Yeah, maybe I should do. I'll keep this one on the same line then. I'll skip for now. Equal, obviously. And divide. Should probably put this one here as well. And then I'll remove from here, copy this, right here. Yeah, this is probably the stuff that I'm gonna explain right after I explain the whole thing about logic and syntax. And I think this is gonna be very difficult to explain because I think in order to explain the equal operator, I'm gonna have to talk about the reference and memory and that kind of stuff, and it's gonna be difficult to explain that. I'm not gonna explain any of this bitwise stuff. I'm just gonna talk about it. I'm not gonna explain it. Yeah, I think that's most of it. I forgot the remainder. Fuck. I'm gonna put it here. Ideally, I would put this on the side here, but then I'm gonna have to change everything. Don't wanna do that. Maybe I should put right after this one. Yeah, I can change. I change this. Oh fuck. Does Python have double? I think I'm not gonna put it. I think it does have, but Maybe it would be better to separate the letters from the symbols as well. Maybe instead of writing, I should just get take a picture of this or show this. That's probably better. I think I'm gonna show it and then I show the site so that they can look for themselves. It doesn't have to be perfect as well. It's just so they have an idea. Honestly, I'm having second thoughts about doing this here because I don't think it's that relevant. But maybe it is to have an idea of all the symbols that exist. Yeah, I think that's what I'm gonna do though. I'm gonna show the symbols and then I'm gonna tell them to go to this website. And I'm gonna put the link of this thing on the description. Because the thing is, what I was thinking more about when I had this idea of sharing the symbols is not so much the symbols, it's more about putting keywords that people can search to learn later. Like what's the stuff that is relevant? The syntax that is relevant to know that is used most of the time. Yeah, but maybe that has to include the symbols as well. Because now I think I'm starting to get for granted the symbols, and maybe it wasn't clear for me when I was starting out. And maybe instead of doing this at the end, I would just say that these ones are the 20% because they are of the stuff that is used most of the time. The keywords that are used most of the time. I forgot super here. Because the thing is, do I put the methods here as well? Of each, because I think it's gonna be too big. Gonna be too overwhelming in the beginning. Finally, finally. Yeah, so I think that's pretty much it. And can put Dell, but I've never seen Dell before. Or maybe very rarely. And global as well. Almost never see that. And non-local is also really rare to see. And I guess if I'm gonna put global, I should put that as well. Raise. Except I think I put it there here. View with break asserts. I think it's then I'll link this article. It has to be only the most useful ones, or the ones that show up most of the time. Not all of them. And I think I'm gonna copy this here because most of them are gonna be the same. And the only thing that I'm gonna do differently is change the ones that are not the same. And JavaScript I also think has lambda. I don't think it has nothing. Yeah, I don't think it has. If else. Yeah, I think before JavaScript didn't have class, but now it has. This stuff is gonna be really annoying to explain about JavaScript as well. I think it's prototype as well. I think I'm gonna increase the size of the box. Yeah, damn. Now that I think about it, that's what I should have done in the beginning. Because then I can fit a lot more in the screen. I think that's what I'm gonna do now. I can raise this. I don't remember if JavaScript has this, if it is the same. I don't think it's the same thing, but I think it does have args and keyword arguments. I'm just gonna delete all of this and I'll look it up. Sport life here. So let's do that. I think I'll put each one of them in their own thing and separate them more. That way I can just go as I make the video. I guess this size is good. Yeah, much better actually. And I think I'm gonna delete this one because it's easier to copy. Oh, actually, I can delete this string here. So now focus on this. I think the operators are pretty much all the same. I should put one single string here as well. Like this. Or maybe I'll just put one. JavaScript doesn't have the three things there. This. This one I'm not sure about, so I'm not gonna put here. But I'm pretty sure I remember seeing it's called coalescence operator, I think. Oh, I forgot this and solve. The rest, I'm gonna erase them. Oh, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe there's a way that I can write this. Yeah, maybe it's better if I try to write it in a way that I'm showing the equivalence. So instead of writing the relevant keywords here, I write them down already showing which words are the same in Python and JavaScript and which ones are not. Yeah, how I'm gonna do that? I think what I'm thinking about is I can do something with network X, where I put these keywords on a data frame, and then I create a graphical representation. Maybe that's a good way because then I can change the color of the nodes based on whether or not the syntax is the same. I think that's what I'm gonna do. Then I before the video, I talk about the color, and then I can use that as a bait already. Because then I can tell people if they wanna access the code to click the link, and then I put something to get their email. Or if they don't want to put it the email, I think I'm gonna explain first what I'm doing. I'm gonna be transparent about it, and then I'm gonna say if they don't want they want to put the email, they can watch this stream here of myself building the stuff from scratch, and then just copy what I do because I'm gonna show the whole code that is necessary to do it. So that way I give them the option to do it by themselves if they want. Because most people are not gonna have experience enough to do that, but some people will, and then they can do that. And then because the friction to do that is gonna be higher, there's still gonna be a lot of people that rather just put the email. And usually what I do is I have a bunch of different emails, so I use my spam emails to do stuff like that. I imagine people will do the same, which is not a problem because the way that I think about it is more it's not really that you're tricking people into doing something. It's more you're building a system, and then all that matters is the numbers. And like I said before, with the watch time and the engagement, a lot of the times the best strategy is counterintuitive, I think, which is it gives you less results in the short term, but in the long term, it increases your results. Because if you're upfront about it, then people may not open your email as frequently, but they will have more trust. So when they do, the conversion is higher, probably. or they will want to sign up because they're truly interested. So it takes more to convert, but after the conversion, the level of retention and the amount of people that are gonna open the emails is higher, I think. But I might be wrong about that, obviously. So maybe I can do both as well. I can show this, and then I can show the script after, or the network X map. So I show all the syntax, then I show the map, and I show which ones. I create two different nodes, the ones that don't have the same, that are not in the same data frames, and the two different data frames. I put as a color red, and the ones that are I put as the color green. So that way, all the nodes that have green color, the syntax is the same for JavaScript and Python, and the nodes that don't, that have different colors, the syntax is different. And I was thinking about doing something like that, but in the future for the fundamental concept, which is something that I think I'm gonna do, which is the fundamental principle, and then maybe I should do this now actually. The only problem with doing this now is that I think it's gonna take a lot of time, and I was planning to do that for later videos. But maybe it's worth to do it now, because then I can use on this video and on the other one. So pretty much create a data frame where I have the fundamental principle, and then I have the symbol in Python and symbol in JavaScript. And then from that, I create a graph, which is the same thing that I was trying to do a long time ago when I was trying to build a web scraper for scraping the documentation of a free code campsite that has all the stuff from Python and JavaScript, I think, or for all of the different languages. So it scrapes the information and then creates a graphical representation of the documentation to see the differences in languages and to create a more efficient way to navigate through the documentation by having an idea of the graphical structure. But I couldn't do that because it was too hard, and also because in order to capture the meaning of each thing, I had to change the way that the library works, so I ended up abandoning that for now. Because the word would only mean something if you were able to click on the node and then go to the page in the documentation. And if you just have the word, then it doesn't mean much. There's not much you can do with that. But then the idea that I have is to do something similar to that, which is obviously going to be less efficient because I'm going to do it manually. So, but then at least I can do, because there is not, it's like I said, 20% is going to give 80% of the result. So as long as I can do this for 20% of the syntax and the fundamentals, I think that's already good enough. Even though I'm going to do it manually, it's going to take longer, because the return on investment on the time is going to be very high, I think. The only problem with that is that it's not scalable, ideally, and that's the reason why I'm thinking about later on working on modifying the library again. Because ideally, I would have something that is scalable, that works for any language that already exists or that is going to exist in the future. Because that way you have a framework to identify, to make better distinctions over the syntaxes and the fundamental and the differences between the two. I think I put this one twice here. Does JavaScript has hashtag? If I'm not sure, I'm not gonna put it. This should be safe. Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna put it there. A dollar sign I know that it has. Oh, also, I should probably put string formatting there as well, because it's used very often. But maybe, yeah, it's probably not necessary because to put that, I'm gonna have to explain. And so this one is a good idea. To put, and maybe I'll put two at the same time, so it's easier to see. And this one I'm not sure about now that I think about it. If I think I'm just gonna remove this, or this should be safe, because I don't remember if that's a thing or not, and it's not that important. It's just to get a general sense of the syntax. Yeah, the thing. Oh, actually, I can't put expressions. I just have to put them inside of strings. So I can do expressions as well when I'm building the network X graph. Oh, maybe before I do that. And the reason why I put this description here is because this is hard to search for. So if someone wants to know what it is, they can search for the expression instead of trying to think about ways to search for this. Oh, I forgot this semicolon thing. Yeah, I have to think more about how I'm gonna structure the syntaxes, because there are general syntaxes, which are the ones that I'm doing here, and then there are the syntaxes for methods of each thing. So I think it would be better to separate the methods of lists and arrays in a different data frame and create a different graph for that to show the differences in methods in the way that they are called in each language. And the other more general syntax. So I think what I'm gonna do first is the general one, and create like a tree structure that for each one there's branches. But I think, yeah, I think I'm gonna separate, because otherwise it's gonna be too difficult as well to do that. Because if I have the general fundamental principles, then from each one I expand on all the different methods. I think it's gonna be too complicated on one graph. It's better to do two different graphs, and then in one graph I show the general difference, and then for each point, for each key concept of the first graph, I have another graph that shows the hierarchy of methods and the tree of differences in syntax from JavaScript and Python. And did I put function there? Function. Oh, switch. Does Python have switch? No, doesn't. Oh, so they put match. Probably copying Rust, maybe. I think I'm gonna stop here, then probably come back later. I think I'm gonna leave it like this because, like I said before, it's not that important to have all the syntax. I just wanna have the general things that are used most often. And I'm gonna talk about this when I do the video. And I think now what I have to work on, I'm probably gonna create a project and then create the data frames, pass these operators. The only thing that I need is gonna be difficult, and I'm gonna have to think a lot about it, is what exactly is the fundamental concept, especially because on the keywords is easy, and those are the ones that I was thinking about the most. So else if, that kind of stuff functions. But how do I determine what are the fundamental principles behind the operators? And I'm gonna have to study that. Like, what is the essential thing? How does the operators differentiate at the low level? And this is gonna be difficult to study. So what is happening? because intuitively I know. So for example, the equal operator assigns a value to a place in memory. That's what the equal is doing, I think, behind the scenes or under the hood. And then, but then what is the multiplication doing? It's probably gonna be some low-level thing of adding and moving values in memory, and that's gonna be very difficult to explain and to research because I don't know. I've, I don't know yet how exactly it works at the low level, and I need to understand this to know which ones are gonna differentiate from the other ones, so I know, so I can write the fundamental principle and then put the symbols that are related to that fundamental principle. And I'm gonna have to do this on the code, I think. So I'm gonna take this stuff that I did here. Or maybe I should write some general concepts first, and then I'll do that. I'll stop and do that. 'Cause I think I'm gonna get these symbols here, and then I'm gonna study and research. The thing that is difficult is gonna be difficult to search for this. Is how I don't think there are gonna be many videos. Maybe there are articles explaining because these kinds of things I think are not things that you can search directly for. That you have to break it down into multiple different principles and then search around the principles in order to create a general sense of how it works. So I have to think about what keywords in relationship to that I can search for that are gonna allow me to understand. And this is my concern because then it might end up taking too much time for the first initial videos. So maybe I should leave that for later videos. But I think I'm gonna do it anyway, so even if I don't use it for this video, I think I'm gonna do this now or after I take a break. Yeah, for example, the string is obviously different than the equal operator in the way that it works at a low level. So, and then it gets complicated because it gets into all the intricacies. I don't know how to say that. Of how does it work? How is it possible that when you put the string, it doesn't the computer doesn't read this stuff in the same way. It changes the meaning. So obviously it's based on the compiler, but then how does it work at a low level in the assembly and then eventually machine code and in memory? And I need to understand this distinction so I can put the fundamental concept and then put which symbols relate to each one. Yeah, maybe I won't do this. Initially, I'll do this later, I think. So the operators I just explained conceptually how it works, and I'll talk about it like I'm talking about it here now, about the differences, but I don't explain exactly why in the low level, just so I can make the videos, and then after I make all these videos, and then I explain the distinction on the keywords itself of how functions work and why they are different, why this show the syntax differences, and then explain the concepts behind it. Then I'll search for how do the operators differentiate at the low level from each other. Yeah, here I think I can search for multiple different design methodologies and methods and things like that, and I can put here. And also search for everything that is related to how the computers communicate and find each other through the internet. We're using DNS, proxies, IP addresses, and routers, and the protocols of communication as well. Yeah, I think I'll stop here. Maybe I'll continue this today, doing the stuff that I talked about, or I'll do some of this off stream and then continue another time. So